Hi, my name is Valeria Garcia Coronado and I am a student of Universidad Tec Milenio San Luis Potosí. Today, in this video, I am going to talk about the Cold War. Let's begin. Cold War was the open yet restricted rivalry that developed after World War II between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies. The Cold War was waged on political, economic, and propaganda fronts and had only limited recourse to weapons. In June 1950, the first military action of the Cold War began when the Soviet-backed North Korean People's Army invaded its pro-Western neighbor to the south. Many American officials feared this was the first step in a communist campaign to take over the world and admit that non-intervention was not an option. Truman sent the American military into Korea, but the Korean War dragged to a stalemate and ended in 1953. In 1955, the United States and other members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, made West Germany a member of NATO and permitted it to remilitarize. The Soviets responded with the Warsaw Pact, a mutual defense organization between the Soviet Union, Albania, Poland, Romania, Hungary, East Germany, Slovakia, and Bulgaria that set up a unified military command under Marshal Ivan Konev of the Soviet Union. The term Cold War refers to a state of political hostility between countries characterized by threats, propaganda, and other measures short of open warfare. Now we continue with the economic systems. Capitalism is the economic system that it is based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation of profit. Something that characterize these systems are the private property, capital accumulation, wage labor, voluntary exchange, a price system, and the competitive markets. In 18th century, Adam Smith was the first who coined the term capitalism as an economic system. Also, this system has been developing since around the 18th century with the antecedents in the ancient world. Socialism is the economic system where people in society equally own the aspects of production. Socialism generates goods and products that are directly for some use, which is a comparison to the capitalism system that generates goods to develop profit. Socialism is based on the democracy and assistance. The Communist Manifesto was the first work that proposed the term socialism by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in 1948, from which following on socialist economy derived. Next, we have an interview. The person that I chose to interview was my history teacher. His name is Enrique Rangel and he is 35 years old. The reason why I wanted to interview him was because when I had history with him, I understood everything and I also liked the subject. And well, he studied history, so he has known everything about it or most of it. First, I asked him what countries were the world leaders during this period, and he answered that the two main countries that had the leadership were United States and the Soviet Union because they fought together as allies against Axis powers. Then I asked him why did countries who were allies during the wars become enemies afterwards. He answered that the allied countries in Second World War after they became successful, they were formed two antagonistic sides, which were the socialist and the liberty world. United States was leading the liberty world and the Soviet Union was leading the socialist world. They were allied in Second World War, but they separated because of their geopolitical proposals, their ideology of heritage, the values they intended to defend, their proper models and taxes were opposed, and also their political forms were very different and they couldn't get to an agreement about it. Next, I asked him where did the Cold War take place, and he answered that the Cold War didn't have a specific place because many important events happened in different places around the world. But an important fact was that where was more noted was in Europe, United States, and the Soviet Union. After I asked him what opinion did the general public have of the Cold War, and he answered that even though it was a time where there weren't soldiers, unfortunately were many deaths during the 40 years that lasted. He thinks that the opinions of the people were radical and divided where they were proud of the development of nuclear weapons, nuclear energy, and all that kind of things they achieved. But obviously, there are some opinions that hadn't approved or were disagree about it, like North Korea and Germany. Finally, I asked him what type of weapons did the two world powers have at their disposal, and he answered that, like he had mentioned, the nuclear weapons were the mainly development, and also it was very noted that the US became undisputed leaders of maritime armament and powers, while the Soviet Union became exclusively overland. In my opinion, the Cold War at some point was necessary because it was one of the reasons why now our country has become what it is nowadays. Before and during the Cold War, Germany was divided and now it is not. So there are a lot of things that have changed and also improved because of the Cold War. But also, it was a very difficult war. It was based on threats, propaganda, and that kind of things. And today, even though we are divided a little, we do not need another war just because we are not agree in something. Thank you.